Karan Bajaj when you grow up? Just 10 people? You don't want to, he's tall, he always looks down on people. You don't want to look down on people? But on a serious note, how many of you want to be authors? So Karan, you're inspiring all of them to be authors. IBLF will help you become authors. That's my mission. More authors, more reading, more books. Business meets wisdom. Now let's come to the Freedom Manifesto. I'll ask one question and pass it on to Mr. Verma, again who gifted me a book that I still, first time he told me, he gave me the Shackleton book, I was telling you. I'm sure you know who Shackleton is, but today we're here for Karan Bajaj and the Freedom Manifesto. I read it on a Sunday morning, 13 days back, and I texted him, he asked me, how's the book? And Sunday mornings are the most peaceful. So I told him it's a unique combination of a memoir, self-help book, and a startup kit book. And since I read books and buy books, I could say that. So Karan, this is how I inferred it. How did you plan that?
The book?
Yeah.
I planned it in two parts. As I said, in the first part, I was trying to codify a lot of the rules that I had learned in this, as I said, in this kind of divergent journey. For example, I think one of the rules which I like is 90% failure, 100% learning, right? So I was very fortunate to see three creative industries from very close up front. In my novel writing days, I learned how a 0 to 1 novel is created. Then in the media, I saw how TV channels and movies work. And then in startups, I saw how startups work. And surprisingly, the stats across the three industries were exactly the same. Only 10% of 0 to 1 projects work. And that's from people who are, that's for people who actually really are experts in funding these projects, right? So novels, publishers, we have Sachin, my publisher here, excellent, HarperCollins, and they're such great publishers, and only 10% of novels or 10% of books actually end up paying, working in terms of making money, while the 90% fail. TV channels and movies, exactly same dynamics. 90% of channels and movies run by very smart people fail. And then startups, same. Top venture capitalist backed startups, 90% of them fail. So there's a 10% success rate across all creative industries, which for me, was very surprising because I saw three creative industries close by. And that's because all 0 to 1 projects are at the edges of a system, right? Nobody knows whether they'll go to the center of the system or not. And venture capitalists can tell you a startup won't work, and they won't know. Nobody really knows because there is a 90% failure rate. And learnings like this really, for me, I realized that it actually doesn't even matter if it's a 90% failure rate. The fact is that when you do a 0 to 1 project, you'll learn so much about yourself and you'll grow so much that the next project will have better odds because you're learning, you are transforming as a person with every project. So part of it is, that's why I wanted to write this book, right? For somebody who attempts a project, the first question is, will it fail or succeed? Most people they'll meet will tell them that it'll fail because that's the nature of any of the creative industries. But you should just approach the project with, look, it's going to fail 90% of the time. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to learn 100% of the time, and I'm going to become the person who's attempting the next project is fundamentally different, and hopefully one of these chances will work. So yeah, stuff like that, right? I think the idea was that I would codify these hard-earned principles and hopefully, inspire more people to take their chances.
For those of you there may be very few people who don't know Mr. Verma, he's having fun for the last 3 years. His younger son just got married. His older son just delivered a baby. But he was the most, and I can say that, having been lucky to build Exchange for Media and meet him when he joined, he's been the most, I admire everyone who does something, but the two most successful CEOs in media business, Mr. Uday Shankar and Mr. Rajiv Verma. And I'm an expert in that, so believe me. And look at when he joined HT, but his love for books, his love for learning is what gets him in. Mr. Verma, you and Mr. Bajaj.
This evening is about Karan. The problem with Annurag is he talks you up so much that it's very hard to live up to those expectations. So, Karan, firstly, congratulations.
Thank you. My honor to have you here, sir.
A great career and very well done. This evening, I have a couple of questions which I'm sure the audience would also be interested to know. How were your initial growing up years like? Where were you born and raised, and what got you interested in reading? And if you could also throw a little color on who were your role models as you were growing up?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. And real pleasure to have you here, an honor to have you here. Growing up, my father was in the army, so I changed about 9 schools in the 12 years that I went from grade 1 to 12th. I think the enduring effect of that was, the positive was that I was very comfortable with ambiguity and making changes, which continued in my career. The negative was that I was very rootless, and like I'd grown up with this idea that look, places change, jobs change, so it took me a while to kind of like build any roots. I still haven't, hopefully I'll build it this time. So I think that was the growing up question, and reading was a very integral part of life because army cantonments have libraries and you pick up reading early. Like among the reading role models, I think surprisingly enough, Ruskin Bond became a role model for me very early because I really liked that he lived on the edges of a system and yet was contributing to the system. So he was his own person, but he wasn't interested in the in the world, it felt like, because he was living in Missouri, but he would produce a lot for the world all the time, right? Write books with high frequency. So somehow I'd like always aspired that I would live like this, live on my own terms, but not yet drop out of society. I don't want to be a hippie. I want to contribute to society, but always at the edges of it. So I think the childhood reading experiences do shape a lot of who I became afterwards. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's definitely a great role model to have. A lot of people have stories, and certainly you have a very inspiring and interesting story, and perhaps I'll be right to say the best is yet to come because you're very young and you have a long road ahead. I think the road ahead is much longer than the road you have walked so far. But when it comes to writing, not many people are able to put pen to paper and make it interesting read, as well as are interesting storytellers, but at the same time make it engaging. You took 61 rejections. As far as writing goes, you think it's an innate, it's an innate talent or it's an acquired talent? How did you develop into a story writer who was able to write stories that others would find engaging and interesting?
A very good question, sir. Thank you. So I learned from the first time I wrote a novel, the first time I was like 28, 29 years old when I'd written a novel. I think if you live an interesting life, you'll write very interesting stories, which is also the beautiful thing about creative life overall, which is the more interesting your life, the more interesting your stories. So since I was backpacking a lot, so I wrote a first novel, which I thought was reasonably interesting. But surprisingly enough, when I tried to write a second book after that, because the first one actually did quite well, it was very nice to see it in bookstores still after 14, 15 years, but yesterday when I was in bookstores. But when I tried to write a second book, I realized I had nothing to write. Because the great part about a creative project, and it could be writing, it could be a YouTube channel, it could be a startup, you pour all of your life into the creative project that you do, and you realize that your well is empty, and then when you try to attempt another project, then you have to really fill up the well again. Which I think is a wonderful life because in order to fill up the well, you again take on a lot of experiences. So that's why I always think that one of my biggest regrets is that I did my first creative project very late. If I'd done it early, then I would have had a much more panoramic life early, if you will, because the pattern became that I would take all of my life's experiences, put that into a creative project, feel completely empty after that, then seek out a whole new set of experiences, whether that was like, learning yoga or whatever, like, going into different things. Then I would write again. And something similar happened surprisingly. I wasn't even trying to, but I grew a lot in the startup days and I tried to put all of those learnings into this project. And in a way, I'm hungry again to like learn a whole new set of things, which is the beauty of the creative project, the creative experience. And I think second part of the question, though, I would say is that's the fun part, which is to have a lot of interesting experiences. I would say the other part of it is a very, like I always think discipline is freedom in a way. A very disciplined routine frees you up actually to live your life in a way. So in writing, for example, I would come back from office and write 400 words a day, predictably for 5 days a week and 1,000 words on the weekend. And surprisingly, if you just do that, then I'm going to write 400 words daily and write 1,000 words on the weekend, you finish a book in 3 months. That's a great part about compounding, right? You'll finish a 50,000 word book if you do the maths in about 3 to 6 months, if you just do that.
So Karan Bajaj, the serial entrepreneur, or Karan Bajaj, the serial author?
I don't know. I'm a person who doesn't. I just like just do things. I don't think who. I mean, I've stopped like figuring out myself in some sense. I just look at what's interesting to me at the moment and I just plunge into it. So, you know.
Karan, you talk about freedom and you talk of the 4% rule. Why don't you tell the audience what is your, we won't give away the book away, but just to kind of get them a glimpse into the, peek into the book.
Yeah, the freedom in the book is all truly about like spiritual freedom in some sense, right? Really about, but the first rule is a very mathematical kind of rule on what is financial freedom, because that was a question that I didn't have a concrete answer to. So the 4% rule is a very well-researched rule, and I tried to kind of research everything in this book very deeply. The 4% rule is basically that if you have a projected annual income on which you want to live all your life for, suppose you decide, ki, look at 50 lakhs a year is enough for me. The capital you need is 50 lakhs divided by 4%, which is, call it whatever that number is, like 12.5 crores. If you're able to collect 12.5 crores, then you can live on it for the rest of your life, because all the mathematics indicates that no matter which country you invest it in, predictably you'll get a 4% return on your investments, net of inflation every year, if you just follow the indexes broadly. So if you can just live on your capital for your whole life without dipping into the capital, or, you know, it gives you a bit of a concrete science around what does financial freedom mean, because what I saw with my batchmates is that it was a very moving target. They kept, the goal kept changing, right? They bought bigger and bigger houses, they got more and more stuck into that. So, better to have a rule and say, after this, I'm going to live very, in a sustainable way, and like I'll be able to live all my life with this capital.
Breaking news, hashtag IBLF is #2 on Twitter. It's trending, so it's a good thing. I'm in the media, I never stay away from breaking news. Mr. Verma, you know that. But Karan, you put so much passion in your books, and I know the discipline and the passionate and very nuanced person. I was trying to find out a term which is not negative. I know you're control-oriented, which you yourself said to on that day and today. Now, when you wrote your first non-fiction, fiction books, you got success, and I got to know you as an author. But now you have fame. People know who Karan Bajaj is. People know he's had a successful exit, and people look at successful people differently. Let's be honest, in society, people judge you by who you are because they don't know you well. It's not that. So whatever little they know, they judge you. How's this time different? And tell us in a real way than your other 3 books.
Oh, the book this time, is it different? I don't think I just don't think so. I think.
No, you don't think, but you
no,
get...
in the sense I don't know how to answer that, in the sense I don't know, I have so much to learn, so much to do. I don't think I've arrived anywhere at all in terms of I'm just, sometimes, as I say, I think these things, creative projects are following a rule. Sometimes you get very fortunate with them, sometimes you get very unfortunate. It's truly following a bit of a mathematical science that the probability of success is 10%. When I get that 10%, I feel very fortunate. When I'm in the 90%, I don't feel very, I just feel like I have to keep showing up and keep creating things, and that's what I want my life to be, and I feel I have a lot more to create.
And I must tell you, when he was the CEO of Discovery, I met him, and he launched with Baba Ramdev big ticket programming, not small. So he thinks big.
And it failed. Just
that's okay.
So,
that
same
not
concept, but that's the reality of these projects, right? You put the same energy into, as I said, the first novel I wrote in 6 months, the third novel I wrote over 2 years. The first novel sold like 80,000 copies, the second one probably barely 10,000 copies. It doesn't, almost your input doesn't matter in the output. The creative success rate is low, and I just feel I have to keep creating things, That's all.
So Karan, I have a question for you. Looks like you had your share of failures like everyone else, and eventually, all the hard work and whatever actions you took, it led to success, not just in startups, but also in the books you've been writing. So according to you, what leads to anatomy of success, in the sense that, is it serendipity, or is it hard work, talent, and all the work that you do? What do you think is the anatomy of success?
I think the two conclusions for me overall are increase your surface area, which is take a lot of chances. So if you increase the just like take a lot of chances with your life, and earlier the better, you'll be eventually successful, right? So see, what I've learned, like very mathematically, is that it takes 7 years for a project to truly, like for 7 years of like creative endeavors to actually end up working. Have some rules on that front, but basically you just have to take a lot of chances, right? So I wrote my first book, then my second book, the second book worked, the third did not, startup worked, Baba Ramdev didn't. I've just taken a lot of chances. So I think that's kind of one part of it. And second is a very strong value system around, like I start the day thinking that, look, all I owe life is my 100% of my energy to my input today. I really don't know where life is a bit of a slot machine. I don't know whether the slot will hit a jackpot or most likely it won't, but I have to wake up with this idea that I'm going to play the slots with 100% of my energy, which is very liberating. I just wake up thinking, okay, how can I add the most value in the day? Put 100% of my energy into the input and try to not think too much about success or failure. So I think that helps a lot because it allows me to kind of keep creating things without being too worried about, whether, as you said, people know me, don't know me, whether this will work or not. So I think that's helpful. That's it.
A lot of young people who are getting success early in life, like yourselves, and you have a lot to be proud of, and be a role model to others. But what's your idea on altruism, philanthropy? Because many of the young entrepreneurs who are doing well in life are now slowly moving towards helping others and helping society. What are your views on that?
My views are that this is I think all the giving pledges are absolutely correct. I can tell you my personal journey, which is really believe incredibly in this space. After obviously the financial, and before that also I contributed a lot. But in the last 3 months, I spent a lot of time at the ground with non-governmental organizations and philanthropies all over India, all the places that we talked about, all the companies that we talked about before that also. The unfortunate problem is that operating reality of NGOs on the ground is very challenged because they are not able to attract the top talent that we see in the private sector. So I think the best value or the most multiplier effect you can do is in 2 ways. One is that if you look at it, 99% of the developmental spending is done through the government. So if you can influence the government in some ways, that's why I've become the special advisor for the Chief Minister of Goa, where I live now, which has been one of the most satisfying things because I saw personally that private sector energy going into the public sector can truly transform thinking. And India is a very unique point where actually the public sector is very open to the private sector coming. So when I am working with the Chief Minister on making Goa 100% renewable energy, large public sector projects, and I've realized that India is at a unique point where they are very open to people like us coming and helping them and, using our skill set to help them. So I think 99% of the development spending in this country is going from the government, and influencing the government is very, very, very key. And I think all of us can do that in our respective roles, which I think is a great thing. And I think the second component is the fact that I think if you can operate an NGO, which is what I want to do now along with the startup, I think that'll be very useful because as you know, obviously you were such a seasoned P&L leader that operating discipline is always a very hard thing to find. Slides are easy, or relatively easy on the nobility of the thought, but operating discipline at the last mile, which is needed for the NGOs to succeed, is very rare to find. So operating it yourself is very helpful.
And Karan, one of the reasons I chose him to do this, I must tell you, I'm embarrassing you again, but because he's advising Ashish Dhawan. Yeah. So when I heard you and I heard him, I know he loves books and he's tackling exactly what you're saying. But let's come back to your book. Why the name Freedom Manifesto? Couldn't you have thought of any other name?
Sachin is here, my editor. It was his name. Do you want to answer?
Yeah, Sachin.
We can probably. But I think he really hit the. I think it was called something else before.
Name, I'm just trying to be funny.
No, the idea was that it was about, just as I said, right? Truly listening to your soul's calling. If your soul is saying, "Hey, it's time to, learn yoga for a year," then there is something to be said about hearing that out. Even though it sounds like the most random, unconventional choice, and everybody's like, at 33 yoga सीखने जा रहे हो, why, what happened to you, why did you drop out? I mean, it's all about really being close enough to your soul, listening to its calling, doing it, and realizing that the growth that you get from these experiences will be rewarded. I think in some sense it was about that spiritual and creative freedom to live your life as much as it's about the financial freedom.
Karan, what next?
Next, I'm very excited. I think I took a year, lived in Costa Rica, did this wonderful pilgrimage, which I recommend, this 800-kilometer hike from called Camino de Santiago. It's an old Christian pilgrimage. I'm obviously not religious in that traditional sense, but it's a 800-kilometer walk. So I did a lot of things in the year and came back very energized. So now I'm doing three things. I'm starting another company through the public sector experience. I got to understand public sector and tech very well. So I'm combining public sector and tech. So then I'm the advisor for the Goa government. So I'm taking that role very seriously and a lot of passion. And then third, I want to get a non-NGO off the ground in which I can operate it directly. So I'm actually feeling almost very energized once again to do a lot of things.
I hope Rahul Gandhi doesn't come to know what this pilgrimage. He'll do a Costa Rica walk.
Yeah, from the Pyrenees, the mountains in France, to like a cathedral in Spain. So people walk from all over the world, all over different places. But the classic walk is a 800-kilometer walk through the mountains, and the churches they really open up the doors and they let you sleep for free. And it's very humbling, right? Because you just have a backpack and you sleep in the basement of a church. And you just realize, like, after 30, 40 days of just doing it every day, that it's very simplifying. All you need is a backpack and you need to keep walking, and you need a backpack and you need to keep walking. So your life, you don't need much more than that. So it's always good to have those reminders.
My last question. You, in your whole journey, in your conversations I've had over the last 5 years, for you, yoga is very important. Meditation is very important. Being mindful is very important. But sometimes when you're an entrepreneur or you're chasing a goal, you tend to lose sight of these things. You talk of a daily morning discipline. You talk of, taking breaks from your phone, so on and so forth. Do you think it's possible for people who are trying to achieve whatever they're trying to achieve to do that in an era of mobile phones, in the era of interruptions, in the era of social media?
No, yes, I think in most of these things, you should just basically reduce yourself to not thinking about them at all. So I call this 1-1-1 routine, right? Ki every day, I have to exercise for 1 hour, read for 1 hour and reflect on what I've read. And then for 1 hour, half an hour in the morning and half an hour in the evening, I have to meditate.
When do you listen to your wife for 1 hour?
That I didn't put in the routine. So maybe I'll slip on that. But I think because I've had this as a routine for almost a decade now, for me, I don't even think anymore ki should I do it, not do it. I know that every day I'll exercise for 1 hour, or I'll find the time to do it. They become very natural to your life. So in that sense, I try to put much of my life in autopilot and not be in that decision point on whether I should exercise today or not. I just do it. And I do, the moment I wake up, I meditate. Even if the kids come to the room, I meditate. I'm very disciplined. Look, half an hour morning, half an hour in the night. Meditation makes me a much more a saner person, and I have to just build it into my life. So the more you're able to just build these routines into your life and not think about them, I think you just sustain them.
If there is one thing you would like to do differently on the road that you have walked so far, what would that be?
I think creating something early. I created my first novel at 28. And that's part of the reason Whitehat Jr., the whole idea was that kids should code to create things early, because I think the first act of creation will change your life forever. Whether that's a YouTube channel or a blog or a book or a company, but just do the first act of creation early. Everybody has it in them to create. That's just our gift of humanity. And just doing it early is going to open your life to a rainbow. And I wish I had done it early.
Thank you so much, Karan. Give Mr. Bajaj and Mr. Verma a big round of applause.